And we're live.
Excellent. All right. Hello there, pod layer people, future humans, and fellow seekers. I am Naiji Coach. With me is
Shiley.
All right. So today we're going to be going over quite a bit of high-level stuff. I think we'll have some time to still do some, a mechanical casework at the end there, but a good portion is going to be doing higher-level theory today because I have a series of questions on the forums that came from Dire Magpie. And I think it's going to make for some good kind of some lessons here. Okay, so at a high level, like I said, a lot of high level stuff today, but kind of overview what we're going to cover is just go a little bit on some general forum organizing stuff, and then some questions having to do with Dire Magpie, his home situation, his Mojo reading, working with the experiments. Also, just some opinions he shared on kind of the human condition in general. And then he had particular questions about my own case, about me and my Mojo. And so I want to get into all of that. All right. So starting off, Dire Magpie, I think you made a thread. You did make a thread for ongoing updates. And that's great. I think it's good to have that. I really like the back and forth. So the Sunday sessions, the experiments, and this ongoing update threads, those will be active threads. So hopefully people will keep posting there and we'll make some good use of that. All right, let's see. Then one of the things that came up was, let me see here. Oh, do we have the email open? Let me see here. Okay, so 1 second, let me get these back up. Okay. Get these loaded. They kind of shut down. All right. Okay. So you were talking about Happy D Artist and how the career bubble is vlogging, but she's also a professional painter and entrepreneur. Okay. So thank you for that. I do appreciate people helping to improve the descriptors for the various samples. To note there, I did add to vlogging as far as her bubble. I added art because of being a painter and illustrator. Couple things that there's not a separate bubble for painter or illustrator right now. They're being lumped under art until such time as that becomes unmanageable. And then her being an entrepreneur, I included that in her descriptor, but I did not include that on the bubble because bubble tags are for people who are prominent in that field. They are known professionals in that field. So obviously her being a vlogger and her being a painter or illustrator artist, I think that makes sense, those bubbles. But as an entrepreneur, the kind of hitters that generally make up, we're doing a lot of CEOs of larger companies. So that's what is being done there, because certain descriptors such as entrepreneur or producer and things like that, they can be given to a lot of samples. And if we give too loose of a inclusion on that, it would make the numbers too large in a way that wouldn't actually be helpful. Because with the bubbles, we're looking for those who are like the main movers and shakers in that bubble. So person researching business, they're looking for Fortune 500, the main companies that are known out there, not any and every person that could possibly be described as an entrepreneur. Okay, so I appreciate that. And that kind of helped give some clarification on the difference between what might go in a person's descriptor versus which bubbles they might be tagged in. All right. So we've done that. All right. So next up is there was a post where you're talking about working with the, is it here? No, that's something else. Sorry. I thought these were still up, but they're not. So I'm just getting them resorted. Okay, things on experiments. Okay, perfect. Okay, so under the experiments, you talk about how you have come back after being away for a while, and you're doing good on that. And so that's good to hear. Some notes on that is that in general, putting yourself back in the flow is an important functionality of your lens that should be flexed regularly. So you want maximum clarity, but kind of like if you're like a sharpshooter, there's also getting your proper marksman or marksperson position. And if you get knocked off that position, your elbows get funny feeling, the wind is such and such, the dripping from the leaf above is on your face. You want to get back into the flow of your ideal focus. And that is part of it. It's not just having a clear lens, not just training it in, but noting things that are pushing on you. All right, a part of that is knowing your fatigue limits. So it's good to actually flex yourself, feel fatigue, and recover. So like you did, you were saying that you were feeling a little out of it when you started getting answers wrong, and it kind of like messed with you, and then you flexed and got back on. That is great. So I'm glad you're doing that. And note, but note that there's a muscle you're using, and it's good you're honing in on that. But like an athlete, you also want to know how much you're flexing it and when it's starting to get fatigued past the point of being good returns on investment. Kind of like a good way of looking at it is like muscles, workout. Other element is besides your fatigue limits, that's like within a given workout. But then there's like your life overarching all of your workouts, and it's like an overall life peaking, bonus stacking context. So if you can improve that, for example, obviously if your home situation is not ideal, if you can improve on that, all your workouts will improve, all your muscle development will improve. So you have the individual muscles, which are done with workouts, which is part of your overall lifestyle. Okay, what else? You mentioned in that challenge that you were doing pretty good overall. Glad to hear it. But one that was challenging for you was telling apart knee and V. So two things on that. One is that telling apart der eyes from ad eyes is easier than telling apart within that. So telling the V and knee apart on the drinking, on the piercing, telling apart vi and I. So that's just a harder thing. It's a harder challenge. So the fact that you're working with it all, that will improve. Just know that's a muscle that generally speaking is harder to work and access than sub versus ob, zez versus jez, and der versus ad. It's those are kind of generally order of difficulty, and telling apart the vez, nez within der ad, that's like a fourth level of challenge. But also related to that is that since you're Nijai, being telling apart knee versus V relates to you personally, and that can add an extra challenge because you're kind of telling apart eyes from your own. All right. So that kind of goes over your experiment work. Cool, good, they cover that. Next up is, okay, energy management. This relates to you doing chores at home. Now, you've mentioned some of the stuff in the past, and I've commented a little bit here and there. But when it comes to the Sunday session, and generally the focus of our research right now, is I want to tie it into mojo reading. But I think I actually can help out now that I kind of gave that early material just now about how the overall context can affect you. So the way that I think is good to talk about that subject that you mentioned is in the context of energy management. All right, so I made some notes here. All right, so energy management is relevant to mojo reading because mojo reading is energetically demanding. So energy promotion and energy management are an important part of a mojo reader's life skills. Okay, so I'm gonna give some advice here that can be used obviously in a lot of different venues, but I think it ties in very much to mojo reading. So that's kind of the particular how I'm coming at this, but obviously this is a general life skill of mojo peaking. All right, so something you mentioned was basically that it's difficult for you to do the chores that are for you to be done around the house, and they kind of build up, and it might be a point of contention with you and your other family members. Okay, so that's a thing, and there's some ways that you can deal with that. This obviously might help you a lot, particularly since you're Nijai and worldly stuff can get challenging, but this advice I'm giving really applies to anyone. All right, so you're going to have things that are not naturally enticing you to want to do them. For example, chores around the house. But you need to do them for some reason. Either, a loved one wants you to do that, or it's just built up to where it's in your way now. So it needs to be done. But there's not that natural interest in doing it. Okay, you can try just force yourself to do that, mainly out of the fear of the repercussion, but that's not the most efficient. The most efficient is to find something that is natural for you to want to get involved in, and then involve yourself to where you can go through a full cycle of it, like a full binge of it. Something that might help is like an example of that is, for example, myself taking notes. I need to organize the notes that I write, all my notepads that I have scattered throughout Blair Lab ship. And it's not something I particularly like to do, but it's in my way a little bit. I can kind of just force myself to do it, but it's hard. I feel for you. It's hard to make yourself do it when you don't want to do that. What works very well for me is I'm like, it's starting to build up. This sounds counterintuitive, but it's very effective. I will do more notes. I will like have a binge of taking down notes so that I kind of crest over this part where I have gone through a cycle of it, and then something shifts. And now I have enough of the notes that it kind of feels like I want to dive in and take a swim. And that naturally happens after a cycle. So finding your personal cycles and causing a cycle to complete will give you extra bonuses. So that's one, is that ironically, this happens to me all the time. I'll see a certain amount of notes that have built up for a few days or weeks. I'm like, I should really organize that. And I try and make myself directly do it. I've done that before. I usually don't do that now because I know better. Instead, when I note that it's kind of built up, I should do something about it, I go into a note-taking session. So actually, technically, I'm adding work. I'm doing more notes to knock me over some sort of threshold to where I feel more like organizing them. This happened today, for example. Organizing this outline for what I've talked about today, because there's a lot of high-level stuff. I want to make sure I had it, well bullet pointed for myself. Is when I did that, I used the muscles that were needed, and they felt flexed. And interesting enough, what happens is I get a little swirly after. I think everyone does. You go through a full cycle, you'll get a little swirly in your head and your heart, all over. You'll get like a swirliness. And while that swirliness is recovering, recharging, get reinvigorated, and coming back for you for more stuff, you can feel becalmed. So today I actually end up doing some extra chores than I normally do, like on a Sunday. And it was because I did the outline. I got all the thoughts that I wanted to do bullet pointed, and then I was sort of becalmed and I felt a little raw. And that's a great place to be in, to do some things you don't like to. I've learned you can kind of like, if you break it down to simple steps, you can go into autopilot. And going into a productive autopilot is very nice when you've gone through a full cycle of whatever your peaking feels it naturally wants to do. But it can't do it forever. So once you flex that muscle, then what do you do? And this is so weird. It seems like a lot more work, and technically it is, but it's easier to do. It's easier to do this outline, then do the dishes. Or do this more note taking. So I spent an hour or two doing more notes so that I had more organizing to do. But it felt like organizing time. And I kind of ooh, I wrote this. And you go in this sort of pleasant autopilot. Pleasant autopilot is very, very important for doing things that don't immediately trigger your peaking instinct. And so I use Jarlene as an example as well. Many times, she does certain things around the house, and she's great with that in general. But sometimes you feel less like doing it. But one thing I've noted from her several times is she'll go out and do gardening. A full push of gardening that she likes to do, that's a lot of work, that's a lot of effort, and then come in and do more stuff around the Lair Lab ship than she would even normally. And that sounds weird because not only are you doing the chores that were needed, she does more than normal, plus preload that with a bunch of yard work. So knowing how to set up your peaking is a really big deal. Energy management is a very, very big deal. Okay, what else can I give you there? And if you want to jump in, Jarlene, anything, feel free.
Yeah, well, I agree with everything you've said so far.
All right, cool. So some other tricks that might be able to help you, tactics that might be able to help you, is chores building up. Is you can make a spirit guide connection between you and future you. And future you is dependent on current you. I know it sounds a bit out there, but this is very, very effective. I use this throughout my life. And when there is a impending thing from the world that I need to do, and everyone can feel this for certain things, there's like a resistance, like I'm resisting having to do, like I have to have all these built up dishes done by Friday. Is that maybe when your family member's coming home or whatever? You're like, oh, I have to do that. So what you can do is have a future you that you talk to that's going to be experiencing that moment, and you have this relationship with future you, and future you is like, if you could give me a 24-hour advance on having everything straightened before the actual moment where I'm gonna get called on this chores I got to do, that would really do me a solid. And it changes the relationship to the dishes that you're doing it not for maybe your family member or the government or whoever's saying you have to do this thing. You're doing it for future you. Motivation really changes that dynamic tremendously. So that's something I would advise. That voice will be soft at first, but if you call out to it, it'll be there. And then you can feel like your friend, like, oh, and you're helping your friend by doing those chores. And that feels good, this helping this future you friend. What else? Lastly, you can do a treat. That's something else you can do, which is you know that you have to do a certain thing. And so in order to get it done, you have some that is a treat that is for you, but you hold it off. You delay gratification until you accomplish a certain world quest. This can be all kinds of things. Like for myself, Janine knows, there's a comic book that we ordered from a startup that we wanted to be a part of, and I got that in, and she probably was a little surprised at first, but she knows me. She's like, oh, it probably has something to do with this shaman stuff, and it does, which is, I really want to read this comic, but I've not opened it up yet, and that's because in my mind, I visualized the me that's going to do that is going to have the Rosetta Stone at 96%. I've not quite gotten there. And so every time I look at it, it calls to me, gives me some juice, or like, hey, we can hang out like a friend. There's a me that's going to enjoy that comic, and I want to hang out with that me. I want to have that motif, but that motif is based on certain criteria, and I can motivate myself strongly in that way. There's all kinds of ways you can go about it. That could be a treat of food, some kind of special dinner, whatnot. I mean, not to get too graphic here, this works. This is part of shamanic tradition. You can hold off masturbating if you do that, and then you will have a upper level masturbation session when you reach a certain threshold. You could do that. You mentioned that the dishes get built so much that you take a trip to the bar. Something you could do is you could actually hold off going to eat your food at the bar, have a special meal there if you get the chores done like a day before you're supposed to get it done. And then you just don't mess anything up on the last day, and you treat yourself out to the bar or something. So there's all kinds of ways you can do this, from the most, to the most, very straight up visceral. But impulse control, delaying gratification based on world quests can be a very effective way to help get motivation when motivation is lacking. All right. And like I said, this is good for all of life, but mojo reading takes a lot of effort. So getting yourself into it and getting yourself to give of yourself that much life force, it's a big part of it, because if you can access that energy, that motivation, you'll be able to solve cases that you would not. This is a very technical thing. It sounds very high level, but it's part of the process. If you are more properly motivated and or properly undistracted, you'll be able to solve more cases than you would otherwise. All right. So that kind of got into that energy management. Also related to mojo reading is artistic appreciation, because in another forum post, let me see where that one was. I can cover that one. Is it here? Yes. In the Naiji appreciation thread, you're talking about how this artist, you said you really like what he says at 4 minutes. If I remember correctly, basically talking about how to be an artist, you need to be pure, you need not compromise, and basically everything else could just bounce. It's not worth your time. Okay. And then you said, lately I was seeing a lot of lower artists dedicating to serving others, especially with fan art, or disgusting advertisers calling themselves artists, as if they're anything else than a public nuisance. It was really depressing, and seeing someone having admirable views on the subject was somewhat uplifting. I could almost forgive him being a musician. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. And again, this may not immediately seem like it's related to mojo reading, but it is. The connection is this. So last one, the connection to your home situation is energy management. Energy management is a very big deal for mojo reading. This is talking about your approach. What you could say spiritual stance, but when it gets technical, your mood. So one was energy management. This is mood management. If your mood is not in the ideal place, it will make it more challenging to mojo read. So here, a couple things I think would be helpful for you because it's out of alignment with the reality of the situation and thus out of alignment with bonus stacking you the best that you could be. Okay, so for one, you say to him, this person's in essence, okay, let me start with one thing. If you put this in Naiji Temple, I don't know this person is a Naiji. I don't know if you want me to read this person. You thought perhaps this is a way to get me to read it sooner. You just go ahead and include this person in the normal Mojo read request, and I'll definitely get to this person. But I don't know that this person is a Naiji, and this is a Naiji appreciation thread. So that's one thing. But with that said, whatever their Mojo is, they had a very purist or hard line stance on being an artist. Now, it's important to note, I myself am predisposed to that style of being an artist. So I want you to know I am very sympathetic to that view. So what I'm about to tell you now is not saying that you cannot have that view or that view cannot be right for you, wonderful, powerful, and true. It can be, and I am that way myself. However, that is not the totality of art. My take on being an artist is not the totality of being an artist. That's just not true. That's incorrect. Because starting right here, there's a lot, besides riffs, there's lots of mojos. All the mojos do a kind of art that's not the art that I do. And then even within a given mojo, there are riffs of art that aren't what I do. And that needs to be that way. That is correct to be that way. So you'll want to become okay with that. That is literally an observable biological realism. So you'll want to actually come to terms with that reality that that's a very particular kind of art, and the world would not work if all artists worked on that principle. It wouldn't work, and it doesn't work. It has never worked that way. It does not work that way now. If you look at all the mojos, and if you see how the levers work, that simply would not be viable. So you want to, fifth gear, relax on that and ask yourself why you clench so tight. For example, there's a question that when I get in this kind of mode myself, and I get there too, like I said, I am predisposed to be that kind of artist myself and have those views for my own personal life. But does the other forms of art not give benefit in some way? They do. And is there a problem with them existing and my version existing? There's not. Doesn't have to be. Now, I'm not saying things don't go bad, but if you're going to look at it overall, mojo peaking is a very successful process, has been for ancient times, primordial times till now. It works. It is therefore automatically beautifully powerful, powerfully beautiful. That's just the facts. There can be things that are very upsetting, kind of like war. War is very upsetting. Lots of wars have happened that shouldn't have happened the way they did, but that is not the way you would describe mojo peaking. A lot of times, sci-fi stuff about humanity, they're just conflict. Like, no, that stuff gets the front pages. But if you actually look at humans mojo peaking at the grocery store, mass numbers, that's not what mojo peaking is. So this line of thinking, whether you know it or not, is actually going to be dissing mojo peaking. It is, because there's parts of the way mojo peaks that are going to be not what you're about, and that's okay. And that has to be settled on. Okay. Fan art, for example, here, as if they're anything else than a public nuisance. Again, Jilene knows I find a lot of marketing a public nuisance. So you're talking to a sympathetic ear now. But with that said, is that all advertising is? As if it was anything else than a public nuisance? No, it does provide a public service. It is needed in certain capacities. So it's a question of being done correctly. But that's going to always be a part. If you even look at G and Z and how you present and V, and there's presentation involved. There's, communication and presentation are part of mojo peaking. So that is a valuable function. It's just not what you want. For example, your style of being an artist, which I have a predilection towards as well, It can go really off the rails too. There's all kinds of horror stories with that style of being an artist. So if we were just going with the horror stories, there is no style of artist that has a clean record. There's no riff that can tell, oh, those are always the good ones. That's not, no. There are good marketers, bad marketers, good fan art, bad fan art. There are good purists and bad purists. Okay. Lastly, I could almost forgive him being a musician. Two things on that. This will come up later on when we talk about my case as well. Something that ad mojos tend to do, and those with Jai in a particular way, is they do a kind of goading, a good-natured goading. And I think part of what you're doing here, I could almost forgive him being a musician, is a kind of goading that, like I say, Jai and Zai both do. Zai can have a sort of tactical goading. They kind of like goad to be swung on, goad to be pushed, to be grabbed. They're goading a forward movement. Okay, so I think that's part of your humor, and that's fine. And I think part of that sentiment is that. One thing you should be aware of is if it's more than that, that's one thing. I'll talk about that right in a second. And another thing is, Jaileen's talked about this as well, is that those who have Z and Jai, they need to pay attention in the written word. When you're doing playful, good-natured goading, for example, it may not translate if they don't see your face and body language. It's just the words that might not come across. So be aware of that. It can seem maybe overly harsh or, cutting than it actually is meant to be. Okay, so that's like a technical thing as far as the medium. But then as far as it going too far is if I read this, there's like three things, this being the third one, of basically saying that you are disappointed with humanity. It's okay, and Jai is predisposed to do this, to feel that and register that as a wound or an ongoing thing that should be helped and healed. But it's very important that never cross over into thinking that relates to mojo peaking or humanity as it innately works. That people are like that, that humans are like that. No, times in history, modes of operation could be like that, but no, humanity itself is awesome. And this is critical here. It's okay that you express these things you did here, but you should find that the greater good and wonder and love of humanity is always a larger mountain. And that's something I've noticed, over time with you and things you've said is something that you want to work on, because standing on that mountain of good and love and proper functionality, it puts you above these things. You still see these storm clouds, you still register them, but they are not all around you. They are not smothering you, coming down from above. You are standing above and going, I want to lift people out of that, up to this mound of loving humanity we should be at. So it's very important when you feel the pain, you still always find the kind of end of that Jai flex cycle, that loving mountain of humanity. Again, that will affect your mood in a way that'll make it difficult. Because I can tell you, getting to my case and also with the Z9 purification, love is really important. So energy management, distraction management, and mood management. If you can find love, you'll read better. All right, what else? Okay, so we talked about that. All right, so now we're going to get into my case in particular. All right, so there's a lot going on there. So I'll kind of read through the forum post Dire Magpie did, and I'll go over some sort of higher level stuff, more theoretical stuff, and then I'll actually get into, we'll start kind of the main mechanical part of the session when we get into the, the cues and pictures. All right, so going at a high level theory point. Okay, so let me get that up. All right, so Dire Magpie asks, hey coach, I have a question. Do you ever purify yourself? Yes, I purify myself on an ongoing basis. I read myself in video. I have an ongoing thing where I read myself in the mirror. During certain periods of intense purification, I will actually not want to look at the mirror until I get my head feeling more okay and less foggy. But yeah, I have an ongoing thing where I read myself in the mirror. As part of that, I represent Pod Lair, but I don't see myself as like this person that is creating a product for other people, not me, and I'm getting some benefit through the giving of the product. I primarily do this so I have the product. I mean, that's the main thing. Me giving it to the world, that's something my spirit's telling me I need to do. My process says I need to do. And it seems like, according to them and, what I think too, it's the right thing to do. But for me, this is first know yourself. Classic, being a seeker is first know yourself, which is my mojo. And then second is know what you're missing, which would be my other, or, the counterpart to my palettes. So for me, reading the Naiji, reading the Nijai, that is what motivates me first, so I know what's going on with me. And that is more important to me than even the gift to the world, because I can't give to the world until I can give to myself. And it's a bigger deal than my legacy of reputation of like, ooh, he did this thing and people all listen to him and blah, blah, blah. That's okay if it happens, not whatever. I need to get non-ignorant. That is the primary thing that my spirits and process ask of me, is to get rid of my foolishness. So that is the greatest juice. Being able to connect to my spirit friends and being able to understand everyone else's mojo, and then being able to share that with them in the process, 5 years of how to do that. Those are all ripple effects of the truth is the truth and demands to be known. And I personally want to know so I can figure myself out. So that's kind of where I come from. On that, something's mentioned over the years is how I have to manage my ego. Obviously not getting too big or too small, but for me, it has consistently been an issue of being too small, and I have to increase it. For example, in this situation, seeing the breakthroughs with the Zenai, the fact is right now it looks clear that the Zenai has the most wide career range. They have the greatest list of worldly accomplishments. So there can be a desire to want to be that, but I am what I am. Starting with that, that's just a fact. So there's no point in lying to myself. That's a false gift. But then also the work I've done, who I am and what I have done is exceptional. So I'm a blessing to whatever category I happen to be a member of. And this ego helps me not be too wigged out on what if I'm a Zenai? I don't believe I am for physiological Q reasons. But as far as like being okay with it, like if it happened to be true that the forensic Q said that was the answer, I could be okay with that. So be aware of that. My ego is such that I'm an exceptional human doing an exceptional thing. And it's a question of what mojo am I, and solving that case is a part of it. But I'm not banking my sense of worth on which mojo I am. I'm banking on the feats that I'm doing with the Rosetta Stone and knowing what I am. Knowing what I am is more important than what I am. I want to know what it is. So that's key. All right. So then you say for comparison, you compare me to Christopher Lee. When I was leaner, I was compared more to like Keanu Reeves and some other people like that. Christopher Lee, I can see it a little bit, although he's a bit more cerebral aquiline. He doesn't quite have the animalistic quality in the face that I've been told I have over the years. But I see what you're saying about being a more sturdy version of him. Something to mention on that is I have a fuller face, that's true. However, first of all, which we'll get into on the mechanical side, there are broad-faced Naiji. I'll present a few of them for us today to look at. But also, my face is broader than when I was younger. I had a leaner face. Where you notice Dur-Ab, for example, even when they're younger or very lean, they still have that broad face. My face was leaner when I was leaner. I have broadened myself over the years on purpose. That's because my family and the neighborhood I was in and some activities I was doing, such as some martial arts, I had an issue with being skinny, both performance-wise and just sense of self-wise, and I went to great efforts to get unskinny. So I went out of my way to bulk up, to have a sturdier frame, and that has given me an overall sturdier face, which, by the way, is less common with Naiji, but I like it. I like it because it gives me some of the benefits that Dur-Ab have, which is a more forward energy and an ability to take space. There is something about having the larger head. My dad, for example, Eileen knows, he was fixated with the size of people's heads. Like, I mean, seriously, animal or leader or humans, it wouldn't matter. If they had a large head, or he noticed, it would tell you all about the size of their head. So, and he informed me, as other people did too, that, you know, I was scrawny. So I got unscrawny. So you want to note that when you saw those, me now in my 40s, and then you said another one, which I was more clean shaven, I was still in my 30s then. From early 20s to later 20s, I went through a period of really going out of my way, lifting and eating to get bigger. And I've lost some of that because I don't really work out so much anymore. So I'm a little trimmer, or just more just there. But I have kept a larger sturdiness of frame and face than before I started that process, even though I don't partake of it as much anymore. And I'm happy about that. But that should be, you should be aware of that, is that if whenever we have mojos where they change a lot in their size, we always try to get the younger ones. But in my case, you have me now in my 40s, and that video is in my 30s. If you wanted to see me more like natural, you'd want me early 20s. Early 20s was before I started really, late teens, early 20s. I say very early 20s, I started really trying to get more sturdy built. Okay, so that's important context for the case. All right, let's see. Also looking at NIG Temple Hangouts, you see visible contrast and energy between you and Glenn and Mitchell. That sort of reminds you of how Starglow stood out in those Hangouts. You have a hard time believing that I'm not Durab. Well, hopefully I can help you with that today, because we're going to be working on my case in particular. But some notes on that. Starglow, if you notice, there's a difference. There's some similarities. There's some key differences. One is she couldn't help interjecting. Whereas I needed to be masterful and make sure things are run properly, which means taking lead and sometimes taking a firm lead. If you watch me, though, you'll notice, and her body is constantly animated, and she has to work to keep it refrained. I actually, although I have very good G and I can use it at a high volume for a long period of time, I still natural frame it. You'll notice even when I'm leading, in pauses, I will let my body just come to rest. Even right now I'm doing it. I go ba 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 ba, and I rest my hand. My body keeps coming to refrainment naturally. So that's important. You can tell, and this is key of an overall thing mechanically tonight, is telling apart maneuvers from the instrument. And the Zenai and Nizai purification we're going through right now, that's a big deal. What's the instrument versus what's a maneuver? Because, for example, the Zenai, what they've been commenting on, is they do a lot of maneuvers I associate with Nai-G, and I have to see past that to the instrument. And once, for example, you start looking G versus Jai, like, oh, similar maneuver, but that mouth is not doing the same thing. Okay. Also, similar to how I made myself sturdier on purpose for various life reasons, I also have experiences that a lot of Naiji don't have. I am naturally a loner, but I've had some interesting experience. One is I did a lot of gaming, and because in my environment, that was not really a thing done. I went to places where it was done and geeked out with those people, but where I was, to do that, you had to be very bold. Bold to start the game, bold to get people into the game, bold to deal with people making fun of you doing it. So being fiercely kind of representing something. I would represent Call of Cthulhu, and when you're living in Baltimore as a skinny white dude, that's a difficult position to take. But I took that position. I went out and found people who want to play it, and I made overtures to them, got them to think it was cool, and when other people came around and said, you're all dorks, I actually defended. So that's something not a lot of Naiji do. Lots of Naiji game, not a lot of them are in environments that are super inclement to doing role-playing game, and then fiercely go about doing it because they have, like, you know, they got to have it. They need a fix. So I need to have that, and so I did what I needed to do, but it was very uncomfortable. Also, I did martial arts coaching. Again, you take lead on that. For me, Jolene knows those periods. Watching tapes of stuff and breaking down technique and thinking about stuff, that's much more natural. Actually, running class is fatiguing. I enjoyed it, but I would be very exhausted whenever I did that. So don't mistake how well I can do it with natural state versus altered state, because I can tell you I did both those things for years and was good at doing them, but they never hit natural state. They were always altered. My dad was very good at sales. He tried to get me into sales. I didn't like doing it. I was criticized because I can be very charismatic and persuade people, but I don't like doing it for products. I only do it for stuff I believe in. So I'm great at preaching, not so good at selling. But point is, I had a very good salesperson who kept pushing me to do that, and sales was part of their business. Making yourself go across to the table and make conversation with someone that you're not really interested in having a conversation with, that was something I was forced to do for well over a decade before I had the autonomy to say, no, thank you. So again, not a lot of Naiji have that kind of background. What else? My mom had some interesting religious things. She's kind of like, new agey and whatnot, but I went to a religious school that was traditional. So I was raised in an untraditional religious household, and I went to a very traditional religious school. This made for a lot of religious debating. And so lots of, Naiji, they may debate in their head or have certain encounters, but to have an ongoing thing. By the time I got to school, my older sister had already been there, and they all knew about my mom. So day one in religion class, I got called out by the religion teachers because they knew my mom did the crystals and the Buddhist meditation and so forth. And they were like, so I hear you meditate. I mean, that's like day one. So I actually had to, and I wasn't, for my spirit's going to say like, oh, you're right. I was going to do that. I thought meditation was a good idea. And so I said so. They're like, prayer versus meditation. Yeah, I had prayer versus meditation battles like day one in high school. It was a little intense. But long story short, I spent a lot of time flexing that muscle, and fiercely so. Other things is my dad did a lot with interrogation. He was very good at that as part of his many law enforcement things that he did. And so that style came about in natural conversation, as you're aware. Like my dad, when he meets new people, he starts with, what would you die for? Yeah, that's kind of how he rolls. We make jokes about it, but it's haha funny because he really does do that. And if you don't have a good answer, he will tell you that your answer is not very good and you should work on that. So being interrogated about what I believe in and being able to sound off and defend what I'm saying was something that was always there. Lots of Naiji, they hang out and they just kind of keep their views to themselves and they bring it out in their art or whatnot. Not all Naiji will say, okay, I know you painted this, I know you wrote this, what does that mean? Why did you write that? What does it mean? And I'm going to try and knock that down. To see if it's strong. And then finally, I was a skinny white boy in a all-black neighborhood in Baltimore. So there is a level of presenting yourself continually you need to do in order to not get into trouble. If you don't actually have a certain amount of outward, I'm taking space, I'm prepared to take space, I am moving forward. If you don't do that, it will get you in trouble. So I hold a more swolled out Ji than a lot of Naiji and Vaiji do on a regular basis. You'll see a lot of them in the arts or the academics, and they'll do it for debates or performances, but normally they don't do it. For example, you see it drop off tremendously in interviews. There are other kind, I'm one of these kind, I actually keep this energy up, not just when I'm giving a lecture or something or doing the art, but during the Q&A, hang out at the coffee shop afterwards. Until I come back to my perch, I don't turn it off. Valley knows I'm on or I take a walk. But as long as I'm present around other human, I am on. But that's not comfortable, but it's come from a life of these kinds of experiences. All right. Because if you're looking at habituation or facility with maneuvers, that will confuse you a lot about me because I have a lot of facility with things that odd mojos naturally do. All right. What else? In the taking charge, her and I may do some similar maneuvers, but the Jai and Ji is different. And we get to mechanical, we'll highlight the Jai and Ji difference. All right, what else? You said you also strongly identify with various durabs. Perhaps it wasn't just a cope. Perhaps if you're like these people, it's that you're not an Naiji. Well, it's for physiological cue reasons that I believe I'm a Naiji. But as far as the coping, the Zenai is a big deal for sure, but it's not unique. And those who've been following my work for the last decade or so can see this has been an ongoing thing. There was a period where, because of the algorithmic difficulty of what I'm doing, the algorithmic badassery of Ziny, I really wanted. There's a bunch of Ziny, Daniel Tammet's one that comes to mind right away. But there was a bunch of them that I was like, I want to identify with that human math computational power. I did it with both the Ni first Mojos because of their world building, because the Rosetta Stone is a kind of world. So I wanted to identify, because no one's ever done what I'm doing. So finding other Mojos that have done something similar, it gives me confidence that a human can do it. So Ni first Mojos do a lot of massive world building. And so it was a period of time, with George Martin and Gene Roddenberry, I wanted that world building. And so on and so forth. The Zibai, because of my background in martial arts, there's a lot of Zibai I want to identify with. So the Zini is a large one, but it's not the first one. In fact, it's really just like the next one up. If that makes any sense. It'd be actually unusual if I didn't have some coping going on where I wanted to have that Mojo's power inappropriately, seeing as I just did that with just about everyone. So that's Occam's razor. Yeah, it's more likely that I just did that again because I did it a bunch of times already. Now, as far as the coping, it's one part of why the Zeni thing, I believe, has happened, but there's like three. One on the coping is they're front persons. I have to be the front person for Podlair. Zeni are very, very good at being front persons for things. And so that's kind of the particular mojo power. Man, I want that. But there were two other big ones, which is probably why it took so long for me to get here. One is companionship, because they've been in a lot of movies that I really, really liked growing up, and watching those movies over and over again kept me company a lot. And then lastly, and this one Jolene and I have been really honing in on, is similar maneuvers. Because this purification, for example, has helped me understand the Zeni more. It's also helped me understand the Nine Mojos more. And each of the Nine Mojos has a connection, as all alchemies do, to every other member in a particular way. And I'm seeing more that particular way with the Nai-Ji to Zeni. So obviously the Nai-Ji to the Nai-Z, they have Nai first. That's obvious. Nai-Ji to Zeni, they have the same two natural state powers. That's obvious. The similarity between the Nai-Ji and Zeni, as compared to the other two, it's more subtle, but it is definitely there. And it is this playing games or being unconventional, and you'll notice it, for example, in the interviews. The interviewing style of Riff, where they take very particular control of the narrative, where they stay inside a character throughout the entire thing. Interesting enough, although you can see how the Zeni and the Nai-Z would be more immediately similar to the Nai-Ji, they don't play the game as much. They take interviews, for example, more orthodox. The Nai-Z and Zeni have more orthodox maneuvers in some much of the time. If you're talking about a Nai Mojo that's going to kind of like turn the event on its head, rascal guru, mind job, be sort of contrarian about the entire process, interesting enough, it'll be the Nai-Ji or Zeni, and not too much the other ones. And there's some connection, I think, also, if you were to say, Jolene, which two Nai Mojos are going to be the head guru of some movement? Zeni or Nai-Ji, not Zeni, not Nai-Z. Again, so there is a similarity the Nai-Ji and Zeni share that the other ones don't, even though as Nai Mojos, they're the most different. But they do have that pronounced thing. And you'll see, like I said, any kind of like movement guru thing, if it's a Nai Mojo, obviously, there's Zeni and so forth. But you're talking just Nai Mojos, it'll be those two. And then also watch the interviews. The way they handle the interviews is much more similar than the way, I'd say the Zeni and Nai-Z have sort of like a alt normal. They have more of an alt normal style, but not contrarian. Not like, I'm not gonna play this game at all. I'm gonna be careful. Is this entire interview made up, or did I actually say anything real the whole time? If you feel that game going on, it'll be most likely one of the Zeni or the Nai-Ji. All right, boom, boom, boom. All right, moving on. So actually, have you ever read yourself? Well, let's repeat the question from earlier. The answer is yes, I have. And I read myself all the time. And we can do that today. We can use me as a case. It'll be fun. All right. Last up here. Or do you consider yourself to be a Nai-Ji because of this? And then you show a picture of like a typology metrics. Okay. this kind of comes back to something I mentioned in your other post, which is you're naturally going to have a sort of humorously good-natured goading. And I'm taking that you're saying that in this way, and that's why I'm going to respond, pleasantly. If I actually thought that you were really putting that out there, that would be insulting, because the methodology I use, my track record, and so on, there's nothing to say why that would be true. And I could become very ferocious that someone would actually think to impugn over a decade of documented work. There's over a decade of documented methodology and track record that is being questioned for no good reason. But I'm taking in the humorous light. But just be aware of that. It's kind of a life skill for you, that when you word things in this way, the way you're wording it, the person will need to be feeling confident and in a good place and able to go, oh, I see, and move forward. If they're actually not familiar with that kind of play, they may react more ferociously, and so on. So just be aware of that. But going with it, you're just asking a good-natured question, and you know that I actually, of course, do not use typology, but you want me to kind of sound off. I will sound off a bit. 3 things. One is that the methodology of Podlair has always been visually based. That has been the beginning. It has been every day till now. It will continue to be the way, because it's the answer. It is the way that it is to be done. This is a tracking-based craft. All wisdom and knowledge that comes from, figuring out jaguars or whatnot, book descriptions are irrelevant. Tracking and pictures and video of jaguar is how the game is played. That is my belief, and it is, as far as I can tell, always going to be my belief, because that's how I've done my entire life. It's how I've learned everything in life, and I most definitely apply it to myself, because I've been applying that to myself way before I made myself public to the world. Even decided I would show this kind of work. I have always just been visually watching the world, visually watching me, going inside my head and visually observing me and my spirits, and then repeating that. So visually observing what's going on in the world, in myself, with my spirits. Okay, so that's just how I roll. And that's my self-identity. Second is, as a part of that, I'm just that way, and I think it's the right way, period. But specifically, visually has corrected my conceptualization of things repeatedly. I thought that, Brad Pitt is a Naiji because of such and such maneuvers. He plays these roles. He does this. He's with Jennifer Aniston. Those were conceptions, and they got beaten up by the visual. So that's just the way I roll, period. And I have a lot of faith in it, because it has continually corrected me on things that I thought I had conceptualized or conjectured correctly. In fact, I thought I'd observed them, but I hadn't really. And then a true observation goes, dun, dun, dun. I'm like, okay. And as you know, with my purification records, when I realize through visual observation what the right thing is, I'm going to go with that and do so publicly. Really, the only thing to do is do it as soon as you can. There's no point in holding off. It doesn't do any good, in my opinion. Then third is, besides the fact that that's just how I roll, period, and I got a great track record of correcting my foolishness that I greatly appreciate, the track record of typology is terrible. So just to give a simple thing right here, I go in all kinds of stuff, but a real simple one is, there's an overwhelming pattern of same-sex biological family members being the same mojo. That's just so pervasive. In fact, it's so strong that has also helped correct some things I had wrong. Where I was like, oh, there's a thing recently with Danny DeVito and his wife, Rhea Perlman, with her daughter. And seeing the daughter really helped, because her case is really giving me trouble. But I was able to look better. I knew better what I was incorrectly looking for. Kind of be looking for like the mystery in the woods. If you don't even know you're looking for owls, it's going to be hard to find an owl. So realized like, oh, it might be this. And that allowed me to see something that was previously challenging. So that is a powerful phenomenon. Personal experience, my dad and I both took typology evals, got different answers. But statistically probability, I believe in Naiji for mechanical reasons, which I go into. But whatever I am, the overwhelming pattern is that whatever my mojo is, over 95% probability that my dad will have the same one. Same with my sisters. I believe them to be Naiji, but I'm keeping an open mind about that until I finish up the Naiji 1000 purified. But I feel very confident that whatever they are, there will be a 95% plus probability it should be the same. They got 3 different answers. When they took it, one got Jibai, one got Vaiji, one got Naiji. Jailene and her mom took it. Again, I believe because of mechanical things I can observe aesthetically, that Jailene is a Jaini. But whatever Jailene is, 95% chance it should be the same as the mom. They got different answers. I had a very good friend that I was trained, and I also was with their family. There's 2 sets of family like that. And in both of them, there was a father and a son. And they both took the typology evaluations. Some of them took more than one. And they got different answers. Again, I think one's an IG and the other one may be JIV. I'm keeping an open mind, so I'm not closed on that. Still, regardless of which way that banks, 95% plus probability it should be the same. So that's 5 instances where if typology worked at all, like if I was to ever give typology a shot, they would have to have gone like, oh, they're all ESFJ. Oh, maybe that method, because whatever method you're doing, if you're not getting the same sex biological family members are overwhelming the same mojo, then your methodology is crap. That's just flat out. It does not work because you should catch that, which is why I've never given any mind, because that's something, in case you're wondering, I don't just like everything's dumb. No, I look for things. If people ever come with temples, I'll pay attention. If someone else does a big data collection, I'll pay attention. If some methodology has their listing to where they have same-sex biological family members being the same thing, okay, they got maybe some game. But right now, typology has no game because they almost always, in families and so forth, get different answers. Yeah, that's with me and Jailene, people we've known personally have done that. And if you go to any typology, videos and people are down there like guessing what they are, my family's this and my mom's that, they almost always say they're different. Microcosm syndrome. So microcosm syndrome owns typology. It is taking them down, lock them up, and tap them out. So yeah, I don't take lessons from losers. Well, if they lost because they did something right but didn't do well enough, you can learn from that. But they've clearly shown they never get it right. There's never anything like, well, you can work with that. No, they've been around 50 years and they still have not caught the same-sex biological family member phenomenon. So yeah, no. All right, so last thing is assuming that I am the prototype Naiji, all these DUROBs misread as Naiji could make perfect sense if you're not a Naiji. Well, no, this is key because this is conceptual thinking. The DUROBs are what they are, the Naiji are what they are because of certain physiological cues. And so it's very important if you ever want to challenge me on anything like that, and I am very open to that. I enjoy it tremendously. I love detectiving stuff. It's the bee's knees to me. But this is a tracking game. So things will have to be pointed out from track, which is why I addressed when you talked about how my face is broader. That's a legit question. I went into depth on that because we're actually talking about tracking physiology. But as far as these other things like prototype, that's a concept. And on that, I can counter that concept, which is the work I've done with the Rosetta Stone, the 5 gears of motion, the breakthroughs I've done, what I've seen, it is exceptional. To the point that I'm going to be exceptional regardless. If I'm a Naiji, I'm an exceptional Naiji. If I'm a Naiji, if I'm a Zenai, if I'm a Jinai, it wouldn't matter which one I was. Is there anyone who's done something like I'm doing, living like I'm living? No. Even amongst Naiji who are reclusive, I'm very reclusive. So I'm not a prototype as in you should think all of the Naiji would look like me, when clearly I live a quite exceptional life. That's not me being egotistical, that's stating a fact. I'm a very unusual person. So saying someone who is clearly so unusual for any category to be the prototype of a category would simply not make sense. Is that clear? All right. Hopefully so, because then we can go ahead and move on. Because like I said, I am a broader, whatever I am, I believe in IG, but whatever I am, I was skinny growing up and I went way out of my way to work on that. I also went way out of my way to deal with the fact that I'm shy. I did a lot of things, was forced a lot of things to like become anti-shy. And then I've dedicated my life to this quest that most people think is crazy, but I know is not. And if I'm correct, which I am, it makes me one of the most singular humans to ever be here. So that person could not possibly have an equal sign to prototype of anything. All right. With that said, I think now it's time to go into the mechanical. All right, so first thing is I mentioned how it is not totally uncommon for Naiji to have fuller faces. So Charlene, if you want to kind of take back control here, we're going to get into the classic emoji reading style. So if you can pull up screen share, and I'm going to talk about some. So 4 in particular, there's other ones, but these ones are well known, is Sullivan Stapleton, Russell Crowe, Ben McKenzie, and Matthew Reese. And they all have fuller faces. Now I'm going to use them and myself, these 5 cases, to kind of show a riff of Naiji that are Naiji, but look different than other things. So it sounds like you're saying Durab a lot, so Zenai versus Jinai. I'll start with Zenai because it's the easiest to get to because there's more differences. Thank you very much. Okay, so what did I do? I did bad. Oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong button.
What happened? How do we get this?
Can you maybe click on this and open up another one? What happens if you click on that?
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. That was my bill. All right, here we go. All righty. So looking here at Sullivan Stapleton, is you can see the proportions of his face. If you were to look at the size of it, this is the kind of size of head you see a lot of Durab having. All right, but distinguish him from I'm open a couple here. Mind you, only typing in one for Matthew Reese. And then one for Ben McKenzie. And then one for Russell Crowe. Alrighty. So if you actually could open one more up here and do let's do Brad Pitt. Okay. If you look at Matthew Reese here, again, look at the overall shape of the head. It is one you associate more with Ab. But to distinguish him from the Zenai, I'm going to start with the cheeks and the emoting in the mouth. So first of all is this muscle right here. I have that muscle. So when I come back to camera, I'll show you. But he has this musculature here. Brad Pitt does not have this. All right. Russell Crowe as well. You see here kind of his mid frame. This muscle, he's flexing it right now. Right there. I have that as well. And you see it here. Also, when he's larger, he still has it. Okay. And then Ben McKenzie, right there. Again, you see, flared up. This muscle is activating. Brad Pitt does not have that. The lower lip, and look at these muscles that are activating. This brings up a critical point that I want to talk about more, is with Xi, there's what I call the mustache muscles. Here, the fascia right beneath the cheekbones, like a handlebar mustache formation. It is naturally where the energy comes from, and it lifts up these cheeks. The cheeks lift with it. This is what I have. Whereas Brad Pitt and other Zenai, even ones who actually use more kind of like moody, broody game, like here. Again, you're seeing lower lip that's doing it, and these muscles. So I'm calling these the chin strap muscles. Charlene, I've been doing it for a while, but I'm giving a name now. The G has this mustache muscle range that does more of it. And then you can really hone on this. Oh, here's a good one too, because he's Z&I as well. Leonardo DiCaprio. Again, you see the energy down here. He's giving a little squeeze with his lips, and the energy is here in this area. You're not seeing a flare up of muscles here. Here, Brad Pitt's doing a little more energy, more open mouth, and you're seeing more of the lip going down and more of activating of this chin strap muscles. So that's one thing. And I guess I'm also talking about the fact that he has the expectancy. Like here, even this big smile is this lower lip that's doing it. And that's a big full smile. Matthew Reese is doing here. Notice the difference. Can you feel the tension here? This right here is where the energy is coming from. And you'll see it, how it comes. See this line here? It's like it goes in like this M formation, like this. And this line that everyone has, it's coming from this, like down. It's like a heart. With the Z&I, it's different. It's this chin strap, and the lines actually come up from the Jai. Again here, it's coming down. These muscles actually are activating that much. This is activating more. All right, so a good one to compare. Oh, can you type in, go on Matthew Reese. Matthew Reese and August Deal. He's one that was updated recently as Z&I, and they did a movie together. There's a picture where they're on a motorcycle, and you can really see the difference. Here we go. Okay. They're both kind of giving like a hard face as they go down the road in war. This is someone I used to think was an IG, but I can now see mechanically those cheeks are sheer. These cheeks are not. Look at that band. This is what distinguishes this IG from this Z&I. And I have this. I have this musculature. And you see here, the mustache, this mustache muscle like so. With him, it's this muscle that gives that bucket. We talk about like the ovals and things like that. There's like a shape. It's more broad with the AB, but in general, G users, they have, it's bigger up top and narrows down here, like a light bulb. Jai Mojos, it's narrower. You notice it immediately goes down and wide, like a teardrop. It's more like a teardrop hitting a surface with the Z first, which gives them that bucket look. But all the Jai, they actually have it to where, like Jailene as well, when it goes down, hers is a little more elongated because she's sub, but still it'll be fuller in the lower lip. So all Jai Mojos, it's fuller there. Also notice he's not really doing a lot of emoting here, pressing his lips, and still you see the cheeks flexating. So this is kind of a good comparison, really. I was like, aha. If you want to know, like, what's the difference? This is something I used to think was a Z&I because he plays real psychological, like the scene from Inglourious Bastards where he's the Nazi and he's like interrogating them. Like that's like very mind-jobbing, and that influenced me a great deal. But stepping back from that, just looking at his cheeks, these cheeks are Zez. These are Zez cheeks. These are Zez cheeks. Also, there's more energy here. He's even giving kind of like not like a happy look. He's kind of giving like a harder look. He's doing that by flexing his mustache muscle. This mustache, handlebar mustache muscle range is how he's doing that. He's kind of keeping himself chill. It's softer because he naturally is. That's not one. He's actually keeping his emoting down, just showing a little like exertion, but you still see it. He's taking no effort to neutralize these cheeks. These cheeks are just naturally neutralized. But the energy you can see is pushing up. Those little winchy muscles we talk about down here, and this little chin muscle here is pushing this up. All right. What else? We talk about instrument versus maneuvers. Here's another one, muscle memory and awkwardness. Okay. Maybe a good time to come off the screen share for a second so I can show myself. Come back.